The Cam Rogers Show, presented by FanDuel. I am Cam Rogers. Hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99 to continue the conversation, of course. Love interacting with all of you guys. And we'll start things off here with the latest NFL news and rumors as FanDuel brings us into some big-time storylines here. And, well, let's talk about Carson Wentz, because the latest is he could be out until October. Reportedly not expected to make his 2018 debut for, quote, several weeks, and could sit out until October, according to Ian Rappaport, as, of course, Carson Wentz continues to rehab from his ACL and LCL there. Rappaport reported last night, they know this is a decision that will not just affect the next couple weeks, but the next 10 to 15 years. So really smart decision on the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles to take their time with Carson Wentz, because you have a Super Bowl MVP quarterback in Nick Foles. Why rush Carson into the fray here? That's the big-time storyline there with Philadelphia at the quarterback position. And yeah, it was sloppy last night, but Foles can be an adequate quarterback going forward for Philadelphia in the short term. You know, you would assume you want Carson Wentz, who was in the MVP conversation last year, back at the quarterback position. And looks like we're going to have to wait until October for that to come to fruition. So if you drafted Carson Wentz in fantasy football, you better pick somebody up off the waiver wire that you think can last you at least a few more weeks. Giving shout-outs here on the show. Romeo, Cam Rogers don't know shot about sports. Romeo, why don't we edit that before you insult me, my man? Appreciate you watching the show there. Let's talk about Le'Veon Bell and the ongoing saga there. So he's unlikely to play Sunday against the Browns. Now, NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport said yesterday that Pittsburgh won't be rescinding the franchise tag for Bell, which I think is kind of the goal for Le'Veon, because if Pittsburgh rescinds the franchise tag, then Le'Veon Bell becomes a free agent and he can sign and cash out wherever he pleases. That seems to not be the reality here for Le'Veon in Pittsburgh. Bell has to show up tomorrow by 4 o'clock Eastern time if he does want to cash a game check for that Browns matchup. Now, Bell could also report by week 10, which would allow him to accrue a season toward free agency. Now, he will lose out on $855,000 a game if he doesn't report to those games prior to week 10, but maybe Le'Veon chooses to stick it to the man, if you will, and wait all the way until week 10 to actually show up. Now, Rappaport noted that the Steelers do expect Bell to be on the football field at some point. They just don't know when. And I actually mentioned this on my show on Wednesday, how it can be so awkward at times when you have a teammate not showing up and you yourself have to answer questions about it. And this was pretty unprecedented. The offensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers, with some harsh words for Le'Veon Bell, Marquise Pouncey included, their star center there, saying, why play hide and seek? Why let your agent say this? Just man up and tell us what you're going to do. And it wasn't just Pouncey. Foster said some things, David DeCastro as well. DeCastro had just a one-liner. Just sit out the whole year then. We're talking about guys who are creating running lanes for Le'Veon Bell. Like, even if he does show up, would the front five of Pittsburgh be motivated to block for Le'Veon? I mean, in the end, yes, it's a silly question. But still, you got to think about the motivation there. They want to fight hard for James Conner right now, who's the running back there for the Steelers, you would think, for week 1. And then if Le'Veon Bell eventually shows up, I mean, hopefully they can patch things up, the offensive lineman and Le'Veon Bell. Now, Bell actually took to Instagram to comment, whoa. It was just whoa. That was it. And Antonio Brown actually went on social media and showed support for Le'Veon Bell. So, I mean, there's a bit of a debate here in terms of the future for the star running back. If you're Pittsburgh, just trade the guy to maybe the Green Bay Packers. All right, the Packers are fully equipped with 2 first-round picks in 2019, so in a way, they have one to play with. So send a first-round pick along with a 4th-round pick to Pittsburgh, and the Green Bay Packers get Le'Veon Bell to toss into that running back core with Jamal Williams and Jones as well. And hey, I think it would work. Montgomery is there as well in the backfield. By the way, everybody's asking about Dez Bryant in the comments section. I see Jared, I see Michael, I see you guys. We will get to Dez in a matter of moments, all right? So stay tuned. I'll talk about Dez and the Browns and the Patriots and all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys hanging around here. But if you're Pittsburgh, why not just trade him, right? Because if you think about it, Le'Veon is going to waltz into free agency eventually and cash out with the likes of either Indianapolis, maybe Houston, maybe New York, the Jets, teams with a lot of salary cap space to play with in 2019. And oh, by the way, for this trade here with the Green Bay Packers, the Packers are going to have the 14th most salary cap space in 2019. So they can pay Le'Veon a long-term deal if they want to do so, and they would probably have to do so if they're going to make a trade for him. So keep that in mind there. Full-on trade rumor alert with Le'Veon Bell, because it could get to that point where maybe, just maybe, Pittsburgh will deal him. Now, which side are you on here? The Steelers, Kevin Colbert, the GM, the leadership there, or Le'Veon? If you were in Le'Veon's shoes, would you show up or would you continue to hold out? Let me know in comments. I see 49ers fan here on YouTube Live. Cam, do you think the 49ers might try to get Bell? Probably not. They like Matt Breida. They signed Alfred Morris. Raheem Mostert is there as well. I think the 49ers are satisfied for now in terms of what they have at running back, but we shall see as the weeks go on. The 49ers tried to get Khalil Mack. Maybe they continue that aggressiveness and try to get Le'Veon Bell. We shall see. Number one, the Steelers have to be up for listening to offers and all of that good stuff. Today's show, folks, is brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 app for daily fantasy. We've got a special offer for all of you. Head to FanDuel.com/chatsports. Use our promo code chatsports. Deposit $5. You get $20 for free. It's great. It's a beautiful offer, and you can take me on my fantasy game for week 1 of the NFL season. I still have spots open. The winner gets $50 right out of my pocket. DM me on Twitter. Hit me up on the Facebook page. We will get it done for you guys. All right, some more NFL headlines here. Let's talk about Khalil Mack, because the Rams apparently wanted him. And Kevin Demoff, the COO, said the Rams offered a pretty aggressive package to acquire Khalil Mack from the Raiders. Now, how about this? This is kind of funny. The Raiders didn't do it because they were worried that the Rams were going to pick too low in the first round. So it's funny to think about, because you have the Raiders leadership thinking to themselves, okay, the Bears are going to suck. Let's get their first-round pick, because the Rams' first-round pick would probably be low because the Rams are going to be good this year. It's kind of funny to think about it in that regard. Obviously not a surprise for the Raiders to think that way. But can you imagine if the Rams actually got Khalil Mack? We're talking about Ndamukong Suh, Michael Brockers, Khalil Mack, and Aaron Donald all on that front seven. I have no idea how the Rams would be able to actually pay Khalil Mack. What would have been a real power move is, in a way, the Rams trade for Mack and have him for that 1 year on his contract and then let him walk into free agency. Be a classic Rams move, because it seems like a lot of these Rams players on the team right now are short-term options, because salary cap space is going to be a problem for LA in 2019. All right, guess who is starting for the Washington Redskins coming up? Adrian Peterson, ladies and gentlemen. Revenge game against the Arizona Cardinals in that Week 1 matchup in the late window on Sunday. So AD was brought in after, of course, the Darius Geis injury. He's done for the year. You got Chris Thompson going to be the passing down back, and Rob Kelly is on that roster as well. Peterson will likely pass Jim Brown for 10th place on the NFL's career rushing yards list, just 37 yards away for that. But he actually has a loftier goal here, folks. Peterson is 6,079 yards away from Emmitt Smith's all-time record of 18,355 rushing yards. Adrian Peterson has a goal of surpassing that number. It's not really realistic if you're AD. He's 33 years old at this point, and if it weren't for a Darius Geis injury, he probably wouldn't be a running back 1 on an NFL roster right now. So we're talking about a guy who has only played 1 full season since 2013. Lofty goal, but hey, if you're somebody like Adrian Peterson, you should have a goal like that because it motivates you to work, to bounce back, to doubt the haters. And we're talking about a guy who came back from an ACL injury and had an all-world campaign a couple of years ago. So if anybody can do it, it's Adrian Peterson, but I don't think it's actually going to happen. Now, as for this season, I think he's going to have a good year with Washington. I like Washington's front line. I think they'll block well for AD, and Chris Thompson will be a nice change of pace back there for the Redskins. As for the game itself, I actually have Arizona winning that game. But I'll get to my picks later. Let's talk about Dez Bryant. Is he going to the Cleveland Browns? Michael in the comments section says, where do you think Dez will end up, Cam? Take a guess. Michael, you know, your question tells me you haven't been watching my show for the last couple of months because I have been harping on the Dez Bryant to New England Patriots train for quite some time. Now, what's the news here? According to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Browns' interest could pick up again next week when veteran deals are no longer guaranteed for the entire season. So GM John Dorsey said that it's a week-to-week situation, but the issue is here, does Dez Bryant even want to play for the Cleveland Browns? He already got an offer just a shade under $5 million during his first visit with Hugh Jackson. So perhaps the Browns offer Dez a deal next week with a lot more money in theory, but a lot less in guarantees. And a true prove-it kind of deal, if you will. And maybe it could be the case. Now, in terms of the Dez sweepstakes altogether, where he's headed and all that, there's nothing new per se. But the Patriots, a team that I think should sign this guy, actually brought in Kendall Wright for a workout. You see, it's all smoke, guys. It's a smoke screen because Bill Belichick, out of nowhere, will sign Dez Bryant. As you see, my top 5 best fits for Dez. New England remains at 1, Pittsburgh at 2, Houston at 3 would be an interesting team to watch for. Arizona at 4, Larry Fitz and Dez to combine, who knows. And I leave Cleveland there at 5 because clearly they are adamant in keeping Dez Bryant in their thoughts and in perhaps some of their plans here. The Patriots continue to be the most compelling team for me, though, because the Patriots' wide receiver depth chart is just so shallow right now. It's amazing to me. Malcolm Mitchell is no longer there. Jordan Matthews is no longer there. Eric Decker, see you later. I mean, we're talking about Hogan and eventually Julian Edelman, and that's really it. I say eventually because Edelman has a 4-game suspension, and for those first 4 games, I don't know who's going to catch a pass for New England outside of Hogan and Rob Gronkowski. And if you're a defensive coordinator, you're doing double time on Rob, bracket coverage and all that good stuff, and daring the wide receivers of New England to beat you on the outside, whether it is Hogan, whether it is Matt Slater, if he sees repetitions there, Cordero Patterson, Philip Dorsett. I mean, that guy's a bust. Let's be real. Sign Dez Bryant because New England needs Dez Bryant. Now, getting some questions here about Dez and all that, be sure to hit me up. I'll answer them live. 49ers fan asking me about Michael Crabtree and the Baltimore Ravens. Well, of course, the Ravens offered Dez a multi-year deal. He rejected it. The Ravens signed Michael Crabtree. I'm happy with Crab. I think he'll be good for Joe Flacco. I think the Ravens actually make the playoffs this year as a 6th seed out of the AFC. Crab will be good for Joe. He's a good kind of possession type of receiver there, a player like Anquan Bolden from 2012 kind of situation. But as for Dez Bryant, he's taking his time. I'm working as many angles as I can for you guys about the latest in regards to Dez. For those who say he's not a team player, what do you mean by that? Because, just to wrap up my thoughts here about Dez, when you play for the Dallas Cowboys, anything even minuscule will be blown up in the media. And Yeah, Dez got into shouting matches on the sideline. And yeah, of course, we talked about it because, well, he was a Dallas Cowboy. But Tom Brady has presumably cussed out, but definitely yelled at his offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels before. And we barely talked about it because he's Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, which he is. But why? Like, double standards much? Everybody has outbursts on the sideline. So this whole notion that Dez Bryant is a distraction, I think is a mistake, and I think a little short-sighted. So Dez Bryant to New England, I think, makes sense from a lot of different perspectives here. The need at the wide receiver position for New England, the Patriots with a history of bringing in veteran wide receivers, the list goes on. It makes a lot of sense. Let me know on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99 what you guys think about Dez Bryant. Continue the conversation there. We can perhaps revisit it later in the program, time permitting. Today's clothing is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. Head to comfortable.af. These are sweat-wicking shirts, beautiful shirts at that. I love them. They're very comfortable, no ironing needed. We thank them for sporting us here on these Chat Sports programs. All right, folks, this is the Cam Rogers Show, and I am Cam Rogers. Some more NFL headlines to break down here. Will the 49ers offense change drastically? So this is for you, 49ers fan on YouTube Live. Kyle Shanahan said the following on losing Jerick McKinnon. It was actually refreshing to hear this. Quote, "So I'm not going to lie. It changes things pretty drastically. That was our first target in free agency, so once you do it, you have a plan on how to use him, especially going into week 1. Now, I have reported on this before, that the 49ers desperately wanted to sign Jerick McKinnon because Kyle Shanahan thought McKinnon was the perfect fit for his offense. And, of course, in light of the injury to McKinnon, the ACL tear, he's done for the year, Shanahan now has to make adjustments. And in the end, I think Alfred Morris is going to be the guy at the running back position for San Francisco. I like Matt Breida, too, so I don't think it's an entirely dire situation here. But Morris and Breida are certainly not the same running back as Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon is the best fit for Kyle Shanahan and that front line there. But at the same time, I also think there's going to be more pressure on the wide receivers, particularly Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garçon. I think Trent Taylor is in for a good season as well. Dante Pettis, of course, the selection out of Washington, and Richie James I like a lot too. But we could perhaps see more airing it out this season than originally thought for San Francisco. I know the priority for Kyle Shanahan was zone blocking scheme, run the football with McKinnon, play action down the field to the likes of Goodwin and Pierre Garçon, and hey, maybe even Kyle Juszczyk could see a bigger role this season out of the backfield. He actually got paid pretty heavily this season for a fullback. So we'll probably see a lot of him this year, but I'm excited to see what Alfred Morris can do. Hopefully you guys picked him up in fantasy football because he could be a bell cow back for San Francisco, especially if Matt Breida continues with these injuries. All right, so that's the latest there. Let's talk about Earl Thomas. He's back with Seattle, but I'm here to say that the Dallas Cowboys trade dream is not dead. I know there was a point of discussion last night during game night for Chat Sports here, and I want to just revisit it because Thomas did report for Seattle this week, probably going to play for the Seahawks, likely not a full capacity this weekend against Denver, but maybe some plays. You know, it's interesting. E.T. said back in January that he wouldn't step foot on a football field if he did not get a long-term deal done. Well, he's here, and that comes as news surfaced that the Dallas Cowboys offered the Seahawks a second-round pick, as to which the Seahawks said, no thank you. So Thomas, of course, entering the final year of his deal originally signed back in 2014. Six-time Pro Bowler since entering the league in 2010, the most of any safety during that span, tied for fourth in terms of interceptions in the last 8 years with 25 in total. Here's why I don't think the Dallas Cowboys' dream is dead just yet. Wait for the trade deadline, because I think Seattle is going to be out of the postseason conversation, or at least trending in the wrong direction. And the Dallas Cowboys will still be in the playoff hunt because I think Dallas will be right there with Philadelphia till the bitter end in that NFC East. So make a deal. Seattle's like, okay, our season's over. Let's start rebuilding, because I think this is the final year before a full-on rebuild gets going there for the Seattle Seahawks. So in that vein, Seattle's like, all right, let's resume discussions with the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys are like, sure, second-round pick, and maybe they toss in a little something extra to kind of spicing up the deal there. I think it'd be a little crazy if you are the Dallas Cowboys and you go back to your second-round pick original offer and still hope that Seattle could do it. I think they should toss in something new. But I see a scenario where that trade could actually go down. Now, will the Cowboys make the playoffs? Let me know in the comments section. Gloria on Facebook Live. Wow, Cowboys will lose at least 7 games. I think the Dallas Cowboys can go anywhere between 8-8 and 11-5. I think 10-6, 9-7 is probably the sweet spot for the Dallas Cowboys. The reality is the NFC is extremely deep, and I don't see a path for the 49ers to get into the postseason. I do see a better path for Dallas to get into the postseason. I don't have them in my projections going to the playoffs. But hey, if they can sweep Philadelphia and beat up on the Redskins and maybe steal a game for the Giants, that'll spell well for them and their postseason prognostications there. So let me know in comments what you guys think. Michael says just 4 games. That's it in terms of losses. Okay, so 12-4 for the Dallas Cowboys. That would be something, no doubt about it. But in terms of Earl Thomas, the trade could still go down at the trade deadline. It's not going to happen like tomorrow or anything like that. So that's certainly dead. But the trade in of itself, perhaps not. All right, let's talk about DeVante Parker. He was supposed to be the guy for the Miami Dolphins this season. Well, he's expected to miss Sunday's game against the Tennessee Titans with a finger injury. Parker broke his middle finger during practice on August 2nd, causing him to miss the rest of Miami's preseason slate there. The Dolphins want to be cautious with DeVante, and I understand that. At some point, this guy has to pan out. First-round selection a couple of years ago. We're waiting and waiting and waiting for DeVante Parker to emerge here. For now, it's the Kenny Stills and Danny Amendola show at wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, and I think that's fine. And by the way, fantasy football tangent, Kenny Stills, get him into your FanDuel lineups this week when you're playing daily fantasy. I think he's a really good selection against a suspect Tennessee Titans secondary. I like Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler. They're good, but they're not great per se. And I think Kenny Stills can be that spark plug for the Dolphins. And a lot of people like Miami to beat Tennessee this week, which would be a bit of an upset, to be honest with you guys. So Parker, likely out week 1, could be out even longer because of that finger injury there. All right, next up, this is stunning. Could Jim Harbaugh return to the NFL? In Mike Freeman's latest 10-point stance article on Bleacher Report, he made a note on old Jim here, head coach of Michigan, of course. Referencing an anonymous front office executive, here's what that executive said. Harbaugh will be coaching in the NFL next year. Bank on it. Come on. Really? Like, Jim Harbaugh is not coming back to the NFL, guys. I want to dispel of that fiction right now. Now, he hasn't coached in the NFL since 2014, where he spent his 4 seasons with San Francisco. Been the Michigan head football coach since 2015. And Jim is one of those guys where it worked in the NFL for a bit, but his demeanor as a head coach eventually becomes stale with NFL players. He's an effective college coach because in college, players shuffle in and out at a, shall we say, more rapid rate than the NFL. With the NFL, players started to get annoyed with Jim Harbaugh, especially in that last season with the 49ers, just the way in which he coached, his style, his personality. With college, it's a better fit because, like I said, there's more of a fresher element to it with new recruits coming in and all that. So it's always new to these players in a sense, and it never really gets stale in the way in which Jim Harbaugh coaches. So I don't see him going back to the NFL. I would be stunned. Now, I'm not ruling out Michigan eventually firing Jim Harbaugh because everybody is on Harbaugh's case after that Week 1 performance against Notre Dame, and albeit it wasn't good, but Michigan football fans, take your time here. We're talking about in South Bend, raucous crowd, new quarterback in Shea Patterson, and look, it's going to take some time for Shea to learn the offense and all that. Before I get too much into the weeds of Michigan football, I will say Harbaugh's going to stay in college. And if he gets fired by Michigan, he's going to be a highly coveted head coach out there once we get into the coaching search season, if he is indeed fired after the 2018 Michigan football schedule. It would be like a Chip Kelly type of situation, right? Chip Kelly last year looking for a new spot and going with UCLA. Should Jim Harbaugh return to the NFL type of way? 3 for yes, 4 for no. Jim Harbaugh, that's an interesting name there, from Metal Militia on YouTube Live, saying that Jim Harbaugh is a joke. Seeing the comments flowing in from Harold, from Ryan, from Danny, continue to let me know what you guys think about Jim Harbaugh. I'm going to say 4, no. I just don't think it works. I don't think it's going to work. He shouldn't do it. All right, you guys are watching the Cam Rogers Show presented by FanDuel. Big shout out to them. Head to FanDuel.com/chatsports. Use our promo code chatsports for a $20 free when you deposit $5. So that's $25 in your pocket for only depositing $5. That's a beautiful thing there. So get it done. Great offer. And you can challenge me in my Week 1 fantasy football game. Hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. DM the page. Leave a comment on Facebook Live as well. We'll make sure you get into my game. Free entry and $50 to the winner. And my team name is The Analyst for a reason, because I don't lose. So challenge me, folks. Come at me. All right, let's talk about Colin Kaepernick here. Going off of the Mike Freeman article, he referenced this. According to more than a few people, the word that best describes the league's feelings on Colin Kaepernick is terrified. The league is terrified of Colin Kaepernick, and there is some reason to believe this because Kaepernick's collusion case is now going to a full-on hearing, which means NFL executives and NFL owners and the like may have to testify under oath whether they colluded to keep Colin Kaepernick out of the National Football League. That's big stuff, because the NFL previously tried to dismiss this case altogether. The arbitrator said, no, we're going to a full-on hearing. And this, of course, comes as Kaepernick took social media by storm via the Nike Just Do It advertisement. Just Do It campaign turning 30 years old. They featured Kaepernick as their athlete this year. Commercial actually came out last night for that Falcons-Eagles game, and Kaepernick actually tweeted out the commercials as well on his Twitter. Now, several people are saying boycott Nike and all of this stuff, and it's a big debate out there. But at the crux of it all, of course, is what? The kneeling during the national anthem, which started back in 2016, started by Colin Kaepernick, eventually by Eric Reed and many others. And at the core of the debate is this. Is kneeling during the national anthem disrespectful? Type of way. Why for yes and for no. Many different perspectives on all of this. There's the perspective that, well, it's Kaepernick's and everybody else's First Amendment right to protest. It's in the Constitution. Now, there are the people that say it's completely disrespectful. You can protest in other ways and not disrespect the American flag, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are people who just don't televise the anthem and, move on with our lives. We want football. By the way, a note on last night. There was a partial protest. Michael Bennett was standing for the first half of the national anthem and then eventually sat down in the second half, which is a bit of a hybrid approach, if you will. This is new in the latest national anthem debate out there. So there you go. Michael Bennett. And Malcolm Jenkins, by the way, did not protest at all. And he has been at the forefront of the racial and social injustice and the dialogue in regards to that. All right? So type away in comments. Want to hear what you guys have to say. Harold says Y. Andre says N. Terry says Y. So it's split pretty much 50-50 from what I can gather in all the votes on the various Cam Rogers shows. So the debate rages on. And oh, by the way, there's no policy in place for the national anthem yet. NFL and NFLPA still negotiating. All right, one more bit of news here. Brandon LaFell, now a member of the Oakland Raiders. He signed a one-year deal earlier this week. Spent the last 2 years with the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a great year last year. 52 catches, 548 yards, a trio of touchdowns. Played in all 16 games, though. Pro Football Focus grade of poor, ranking 96th among all wide receivers in the NFL last year. Now, this news comes, of course, as Dez Bryant was recently released by the Raiders, and the whole Bryant mystery continues. I don't know why that guy just can't figure out some sort of chemistry with a team, because I think he's a talented player. I like him a lot as a player, but I guess it's not working out from a personality standpoint and all of that.